Action step 6 is to refresh your understanding of the rules exceptions. So in a previous video, we talked about the importance of knowing the rules requirements. And the general requirement is that you make your digital assets and content WCAG 2.1 AA conformant. But now the focus is in on the exceptions. And there are 5 exceptions under this rule. It is so important that you're aware of the exceptions and the details for each exception, because we don't want to unnecessarily work on any content that we don't have to. There is already so much work to do. We want to make sure that we are very aware of all of the exceptions and that we're not working on any content that we don't have to. So let's go over the 5 exceptions. The first exception is archived web content. And what you should know is that beyond this first steps guide, there are several layers to this. There are several bullet points that need to be met for content to be considered archived. So if there is archived content, you need to make very sure that you're aware of all of these bullet points that need to be met. But archived web content is an exception under the web rule, as is pre-existing conventional electronic documents, otherwise referred to as CEDs. So think of CEDs as PDFs, word processor file formats, presentation file formats, and spreadsheet file formats. So better known as Word docs, PowerPoint, and Excel spreadsheets. But of course, there can be other branded types of these documents, but those are the ones traditionally used. But the point here is that there is an exception for pre-existing conventional electronic documents. Note the word pre-existing. That's the key here, and that's a theme when it comes to exceptions. So pre-existing documents, as well as content posted by third parties. Now, this is not going to cover content posted by third parties that you have contractually engaged in to post the content. So know that this is going to be content that is posted by an unaffiliated third party. So again, it's absolutely necessary that you understand all of the details here, and the fact sheet does a really good job of breaking down the details, as does the accessible.org fact sheet guide. But just know that content posted by third parties that you are unaffiliated with will generally fall as an exception. All right, and so the fourth exception is for individualized password protected conventional electronic documents, so CEDs, so PDFs, Word documents, PowerPoints, spreadsheets. Those also fall under an exception. And so there's a reminder here: to qualify for this exception, a document must be about a specific person, property, or account. And then the last exception listed is an exception for pre-existing social media posts. So note that keyword, pre-existing. So here, if there are social media posts from before the compliance deadline, then these posts would also qualify for an exception. And then there's one last reminder under this section. Remember, even if some of your web content or content in mobile apps is covered by an exception, your state or local government still has to meet its other existing obligations under the ADA. And the ADA requires that your public entity provide individuals with disabilities effective communication, reasonable modifications, and an equal opportunity to participate. So what this can mean is that if there is a request here, your public entity would still need to provide the content to a person with disability, and that content would need to be in an accessible format. So that's more of a general catch-all, but the important part here is to focus in on these exceptions and really study these exceptions, because here's where we see some details, some really detailed nuances come into play. And it's so important that your staff, your team, your contractors are aware of these exceptions, so that we're not working on content that would qualify for an exception. And there is work to do to make sure that you are meeting these exceptions. So, with pre-existing social media posts, there's no work. It's either going to be a pre-existing post or it's not. But when we scroll to archived content, there is work that will potentially need to be done to qualify for this exception, for content to qualify for this exception. So that's really important to be aware of. Read through the fact sheet, read through the accessible.org fact sheet guide, and that's going to do it for action step 6. We will continue on with action step 7.